Hello, I wanted to do a little video. Happy post-Thanksgiving. Um, this video is prompted by the little Twitter beef that my boy Sam Tiedemann told me about between Peugeot and James Lindsay yesterday, but it's related to a lot of stuff I'm often thinking about. And it's really about the fact that I think James Lindsay he has this faith in the Enlightenment and rationality, and then I would say ultimately the body that is formed by faith in Enlightenment and rationality is the body politic, modern politics. And I think that it's very much what you see and hear depends a lot on where you're standing and the kind of person you are. In the same way, I also was watching, I think will be helpful illustrating, my wife and I just watched All the Light You Cannot See on Netflix, which is pretty good. I wouldn't say it's great, but it's really good, and it this won't ruin the film at all, or the miniseries, I guess. But one of the little sayings of the film, in which the title is based on, is the most important light is the light you cannot see. Which is very interesting to me from a scientific understanding of light and the electromagnetic spectrum, kind of. So, as someone who studied chemistry, we had to learn about this because some of chemistry and spectroscopy and taking measurements to find out chemical compositions of things involves different modes of spectroscopy, which are involved with certain light detection based off of certain emissions of light based on chemical compositions of compounds. So, for example, we have visible light on the electromagnetic spectrum is from 400 to 700 nanometers, which is just the measurement of the wavelength of the light, and which has to do with frequency and all these different things. So that's what the human eye, is capable of perceiving, that wavelength of nanometers, which is 400 to 700 nanometers, Roy G. Biv. It's the rainbow, the light of the rainbow: red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet, right? And then you have infrared, and then you have ultraviolet light, which you can't see, and then outside, gamma rays, X-rays, pure infrared, light you can't see. But then you can have like night vision goggles, which are infrared goggles, and then you can see heat waves, light waves, so they're light, but it's, we feel it as heat. And you could see that in the dark because there's infrared light in the dark, in our dark. So it's light you cannot see. Then I would also add in one other little piece of the mosaic. I can't remember which physicist it was, but it was an atheist physicist that talked about that what matter is just cooled light. It's condensed light. And I've talked about this before, but that makes sense because, like, for example, if you're doing, I forget what kind of spectroscopy it's called, like plasma spectroscopy. So I worked in a lab where we would test vitamins, and you'd have to know in these certain products you're putting out, like on the back, on the nutritional label, what vitamin content is in there, because that's something that you have to actually be able to prove and have records for if you're selling it, both, for expiration dates, in case there's some misbatch or whatever, you have to be able to prove in each batch, each lot of things you're selling, you have the right amount of chemicals. So like vitamin A or vitamin C, we used to have to test these all the time. Vitamin C was a titration experiment, so it's just a solvent-based thing. It wasn't, so in solution. I'm remembering all these terms like people don't know. So you just dissolve these tablets in water, so a solution. This is water, aqueous solution. And then you do a certain titration, which is you let out a certain amount of the solution in water into a different kind of solution, and when it changes color, then that's the measurement. The chemical reaction has happened. You've exhausted the limiting reagent. This is just interesting how like chemistry to me seems, at least the base level chemistry that I learned, seems like it's like a monkey could do it. We always used to say that in the lab, but that's not true, because what you see in here depends a lot upon where you're standing and the kind of person you are. So it seems like a monkey could do it to me because I was educated in it and I understand it, at least to the level that I do. And so it seems basic, but that's like for anything. You go watch a prima ballerina or an NFL player and it's like, oh, what they do looks easy. That's because they make it look easy. And my daughter just said that. And you know all these things. So you know these things, not just in your head, but in the entirety of your being, because you do them. So, wow, circling all the way back. But there's another kind of chemistry thing. This is also a chemistry lesson. You're welcome. There's another kind of test you could do where you, like vitamin E, I believe, was this kind of test, where you dissolve the same or a different one if there's vitamin E in it in solution, and then you would get a very small amount that you would take out in this tiny little syringe. So you'd have like microliters, I believe, of solution, a very small amount, and then you would inject it in this machine that would shoot it through this cross section of like a plasma torch. Essentially, it's burning at a super intense heat, and then it would emit, and there's a diode on the other side, this thing that detects light, and it would emit a certain wavelength of light, because depending on the metals and the concentration of the metals that are in this little solution, it emits light at a certain level, at certain colors. Because what happens is when you burn, let's say, cobalt or all these different components that are in a lot of vitamins, they burn at different colors and at different intensities based on the solution, the concentration of the solution. So you're taking matter, right? These vitamins, which are usually like, they're solid or they're fat soluble or they're water soluble. Usually vitamins are fat soluble mostly. Well, depending on some are, there's both. And then, so you put it through there, it emits light, and you can detect it because you're turning the solid, which is then in a solution, so it's in water or whatever solution, but then you sublimate it. There's all these different states of matter, right? Matter is really light, is where we're coming back to. So you take the solid, you put it into a liquid, and then you put it through a torch, it turns into a gas, sublimation, and it emits light. It turns into light, and it turns into vapor. You actually sublimate it away. It turns into light. That's the conversion that we have. And there's all these, whether or not I submit to all these laws of physics, I don't know. It's like the speed of light, Rupert Sheldrake. It actually changes if you measure it. And they used to measure it, but then they made it a constant. Check out Rupert Sheldrake. He's awesome. Okay, circling all the way back. That was all. I went on a 5-minute riff about how all matter is light. All the light we cannot see. 400 to 700 nanometers. The electromagnetic spectrum, that's the light we can see. So there's a lot of light that we can't see outside of that, right? All of that light is important. What constitutes that light? Are there beings made of light? C.S. Lewis, in his Ransom Trilogy, postulates that the Eldila, the angels, essentially, in that world, are beings that are composed of light and see and move around in the world of matter, almost in an inverse relationship to the way that we are composed of matter and see and move around in a world made of light. Angels are almost the opposite. And what would that do to the physics and the relationship of time for angels? Perhaps a day would be as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years would be as a day. And their locality, they could move localities in ways. Rupert Sheldrake talks about this in a really complicated way that is based in Dionysius and some Hildebrand, what's her name, Helga, some abbotess, German abbotess after Aquinas, but they're the three greatest Christian thinkers on angels, and they probably go into like some Islamic and other understandings of spiritual beings. So there's a lot of light we cannot see. I'm wondering if the audio of this sucks because this was connected to the speakers. That's going to be disappointing because I've been talking for 10 minutes now. All right. So we were talking about James Lindsay and Peugeot, went into all the light you cannot see, chemistry, physics, light's important, what you see and hear. So James Lindsay, let's just say this. This is a good way to illustrate it. We can see from 400 to 700 nanometers. That's the light that we can see with our eye. There's also things that you can and cannot see with your mind, the eye of your mind. There's certain light, and this I mean not literally but figuratively light. There's certain things that you can perceive, because this is what you see and hear depends a lot upon where you're standing and the kind of person you are, that you cannot perceive without being habituated to it and without moving in certain mediums. This is what Peugeot means this is ultimately what I think what the Bible means, that like everything is faith. Whatever doesn't come from faith is sin, and faith is trust in something. You got to serve somebody. You cannot serve two masters. Either you hate the one and love the other. You cannot serve God and mammon. Ultimately, at the end of the day, I would say that's what you're doing. You're serving God or mammon. Transactionalism, utilitarianism, trying to get my will, not your will. And serving God is your will, not my will. The natural will, not the gnomic will, not the deliberative will that we think is libertarian freedom, which is stupid. Unwise, maybe is a nicer way to say it. Ignorant, perhaps. And ignorant isn't pejorative, it's just a statement of we're all ignorant in different regards. So if you are trained in the world, my son just got back from a run, good for him, it's like 15 degrees out. If you are trained in the world of systems and industry and politics, and it's an impersonal machine world, that's all you're going to have faith in. You can't have faith in anything else. But if you have faith in love and persons and God and Christ in me, I would argue that's true faith. I'm just going to cut it off there.